here. Sorry for all the start and stop. I was trying to figure out the whole sort ahead of time when the stream is going to start. Not a tech savvy guy. Seems like every week is a learning experience for me. I believe I got everything dialed in though and set up very well. I got a lot of really important information for you to get. You know, I'm going to try my best to get it out to you in as good of a format as possible. And we're going to continue on with our tinfoil turfgrass episode that we were talking about last week. You know, putting these things on, call out YouTube channels, but to point out just some of the information that could use some correction, try to give you a little bit more positive outlook on how to get along, like that right there. I'm sorry, that right there. So I'm just going to do a brief here, and then we'll go ahead and get along with this episode. You know, I've been talking about my channel, you know, and I'm not trying to be some YouTube star. I'm just trying to get out some information. You know, I'm doing a lot of studying, and I'm just trying to get real information out to you. You know, I listen and I watch a lot of YouTube channels, and it just seems like every time I listen to somebody, you know, there's just one little piece of information that just isn't really true. Just going to point out one I just saw last night on a short. Dog urine burn spots in your grass. There's an episode I watched about this where there was a lot of research done, studies done, and you know, everybody thinks that it's nitrogen in the dog pee, and that's just not true. It's actually lactic acid that is creating that burn spot in your lawn. And the best way to treat it, I've already played this on the channel, but the best way to treat a burn spot in your lawn is just to, after your dog does his business, go over there with some water. You know, maybe just have a watering can at your back door or whatever door, and have it full, ready to go. Just go over there and, you know, kind of drown it out in a couple of cups. You know, that's the best way to stop those dog burns. You know, if you got a lot of dogs, have a big watering can, have your hose ready. But, you know, follow up with your dog after he does his business and just kind of wash it out a little bit. And that should get your grass from burning. So last week in the tinfoil turfgrass, you know, the one big outtake from it that I was trying to get across was the whole nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and the ratio that the turf grass, your grass, is going to uptake those different nutrients. You know, 4 to 1 to 2. 4%, I'm not quite sure the right way to explain this here, but you know, we're talking 4-1-2. You know, if you have 4 parts nitrogen, the turf grass is only going to utilize 1% of the phosphorus available and 2% of the potassium. And the whole point of this was, if you're going to put down a triple 18 or a high phosphorus type fertilizer, you know, you can just dump as much as you want in the soil. The plant only takes up so much of it in relationship to the amount of nitrogen. Nitrogen drives every single macronutrient that's uptake. So the more phosphorus you apply, it doesn't do anything to assist or help your turf grass in absorbing, taking up that phosphorus or the potassium. It's only going to take up what it can take up based on the amount of nitrogen that it's utilizing. So I hope I explained that okay, but if you're putting down a triple 18 or a 10, 10, 10, or whatever it is, a high, like a flower bloom type of a fertilizer that has high phosphorus, low nitrogen, low potassium, doesn't matter. You can dump as much phosphorus as you want in. Your plant's not going to take up any more than's available. And the last thing and point to that was phosphorus is highly restricted in most states. So you got to think about what you're doing, and that's what we're talking about is responsibility, being a responsible homeowner and just not doing things that's going to end up down the line causing legislators to totally ban us from fertilizing our own lawns. That's going to be ridiculous. So let's be responsible. Let's learn how the grass is going to uptake all these different nutrients and, have a great lawn. I mean, that's all I want. I mean, my lawn right here, let's see, right here. I don't put anything on this, hardly. Nitrogen, phosphorus. I don't put any phosphorus. I just put nitrogen and iron. Sorry about that. That was a misspeak. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and start this new tinfoil turf grass. There's a little bit of good information in here, actually a lot of good information, and it's kind of entertaining. We'll move through this, and I got a couple more scenes we're going to go through to learn a little bit more about projects and what you can do, how you can do to get your yard looking great.
Now let's go to the next part of his, whatever you call it, his products, and see what he says here. What did he say?
Stupid, and I just ran out of Turf Titan Lawn Striper, which is what I use right now, combined with triple 18, or I use a Lawn Star. So this is the Turf Titan Lawn Striper, right?
Lawn Striper. So Lawn Striper is... I try to get these up. The Lawn Striper is right here. Okay. Now, you're not going to be able to see this on the screen necessarily, but I'm going to tell you what the Lawn Striper is. It's a 1200 with 6% iron, 2% manganese. It's just basically 1200 is all it is. There's a lot of 1200s. There's a lot of 1200s in the industry. Dozens and dozens of companies make 1200s. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. You would definitely see a good response from this applied at the right rate. The issue I have is that these products have iron glucoheptanate and manganese glucoheptanate in them, and they're marketed as chelated iron. So if I were to apply this product, or if I would consider using a product like this, I would, I don't apply liquids, but if I had a program or I wanted to apply liquid fertilizer, I might actually consider applying a product like a 1200, like this particular product could consider applying it. But don't have any delusions. You're not applying a soil chelate when you apply iron glucoheptanate or manganese glucoheptanate. Glucoheptanate, unfortunately, by APCO definitions, is a chelate, and it may have some value in terms of the blending in the jug, and its solubility through your screens and through the nozzles and so forth. There may be some value there. I'm not a solution chemist, so I don't know. And it may have some value in terms of staining. It may reduce the staining potential of this product. I don't know about that. But when it hits the soil, which is why a lot of people would buy a chelate. I'm going to buy a chelate to maintain the solubility of this manganese and iron in the solution, or increase the...
Okay, I'm just going to briefly stop right here, and then I'm going to move on, fast forward a little bit. The main point of this right here is just kind of continuing on the fact that, fertilizer companies in general that provide lawn care products, they don't necessarily tell you accurately even what their product does. So, he's talking about chelated products, and, a chelated product basically is puts like a protective coating or just a protection around the molecule that it's trying to protect, like iron. Iron, the reason why they want to chelate iron is because iron basically oxidizes as soon as it hits your soil. So if there's a chelated product on it that's going to help protect it, the theory is, and the thought is that it's going to slowly release that iron into your soil as the chelated product kind of evaporates away, you know, the word I'm looking for, it just basically, as it breaks down, the chelated product stops protecting that iron molecule and it exposes it more and more to the environment. And as it exposes it, it's supposed to slowly let it release into your soil. And that's what he's talking about. You think you're adding a chelated product to slowly release something into your soil, and it's not doing that at all. And that's why he's talking about these chelated products. You know, chelated products with iron is really important, because everything we always talk about iron is that it oxidizes away. And the reason why you see that instant green up is because of the staining. And some of these chelated products that are used with the iron to protect the iron molecule slow that process down, and also can prevent staining. They're not going to like prevent it 100%, but they're going to make it less. And that's what he's talking about here with some of these chelated products. So I just wanted to kind of clear that up and let you know what. So what he's saying is that this chelated product that's in this product right here is basically worthless.
Magnesium glucoheptanates in 12 soils or something like that, and those glucoheptanates have no soil chelation ability at all. So buy the 1200, apply it. You're going to see probably a very good response to a product like this. There's very little doubt in my mind. But just don't buy it based upon, oh, I'm buying a chelate, because you're not buying a soil chelate when you buy a product like this. Okay. The next part, we continue in this video.
Right here is the Lawn Star iron. Again, I'm not a scientist.
So Lawn Star iron is a 6% sugar-based chelator. Oh, it says iron sulfate chelated with sodium glucoheptanate. So yeah, it's also iron glucoheptanate. This product will almost undoubtedly turn your grass green. There's virtually no question about it if you apply it at the right labeled rate. But again, it is not a chelate. It's not a soil chelate like EDTA, DTPA, or EDDHA, or there's many other chelates as well, not just those.
So all these chelated products that he's talking about are just different types. I believe it's the EDDHA is one of the most expensive. It's probably the best, especially for a higher pH soil. So if your soil is in the 8s and 9s, that's the type of chelated product you want to use to help the iron solubilize into your soil. These other chelated items or products that he's talking about, EDTA, and so on and so forth. A lot of those are only active up to certain pHs. You know, once your pH gets above, I believe it's 6 for the EDTA, and 7 for one of the other ones. The EDDHA is one of the only chelated products that actually works in all those pH levels. And again, this is kind of where I go back to pH, and why knowing your soil's pH and what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish can be important for the solubility of a chelated product.
But those three are kind of staples in our industry. Glucoheptanate, polysaccharides, even iron citrate. These products have virtually no soil chelation ability at all. And that's all in that paper. Go and look at those papers that I've gone over before. Adding macros and micros. There are, besides iron and manganese, with 2 micronutrients, besides iron and manganese, I don't know of any bona fide response to any micronutrient other than those 2. And you can apply those as liquid. But if you're going to apply them as granular, you only have one option. And for manganese sulfate, you can apply that. You can't apply any granular iron unless it's chelated, but that's so expensive. It's kind of pointless to do it that way. But if you're going to spray out micronutrients.
So again, he's talking about chelated EDDHA, which is an expensive way of doing it. He studies, and I've mentioned this before, this is Dr. Travis Shaddix. He's got a doctorate in soil science. He's done lots of research. His main key areas that he's done research in are soil science, of course, but iron products and those sorts of things. He knows a lot about iron, and iron is probably one of the most complicated micronutrients that you can put in your yard. But basically all he's saying here is there's really no reason to put anything other than the iron and the manganese into your soil, whether it's foliar or through granular products. And like I said, applying a granular iron is not going to do anything for you. The only response you actually see from a granular iron is something else that's in the product, whether it's sulfur, nitrogen. Those are the only real items, fertilizers, that are going to green your lawn. So just trying to pass that information along, because it's really
just make sure they contain iron and manganese, and you're wasting pretty much all your money on everything else. So and there are products out there that just have iron sulfate and manganese sulfate, or you can do the iron chelates and manganese chelates in those as well and reduce your staining potential. But anything else I'm just going to buy one micronutrient blend. Anything else in there is just waste. You're not. I mean, you could be harming some things in the world of zinc. There could be some harm that you're applying micronutrients with high zinc. It could cause some problems. But you're probably not hurting anything by applying this other stuff agronomically. You're just hurting your pocketbook because you're buying these things. You're not getting anything out of it. You're applying these 18-18-18s and 13-13-13s and 20-20-20s. You're just wasting a ton of money. It's probably illegal if you're doing it granular in some states with the phosphorus. You can't apply that much phosphorus in many states. But if you're spraying them out, I mean, there's a chance you're hurting some stuff by applying that much potassium. I've gone over that before. Potassium has more of a chance to harm your grass than help your grass. With phosphorus, I'm personally not overly concerned about phosphorus movement because it just sticks wherever it goes. But the legislatures in our states have seen things differently, and they restrict a lot of that phosphorus application. So I wouldn't be applying a lot of macronutrients that have high phosphorus in them. And I wouldn't be wasting my time putting a lot of macronutrients that have a lot of potassium in them unless I had a bona fide phosphorus deficiency or a bona fide potassium deficiency. Maryland is a no phosphorus state. So and I think that might be the case also even with things like compost in Maryland, if I'm not mistaken. You can't even apply compost unless it's been confirmed you have a phosphorus deficiency or the compost doesn't have phosphorus in it. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding.
I apply a sea kelp and a humic acid to...
Oh, good. Now we're getting into the tinfoil stuff. Sea kelp and humic acid. I've gone over sea kelp before, humic acid. I've gone over a couple papers on that. Neither one of them showed any response to any of that stuff. However, there is an outside chance you could possibly see a response to things like sea kelp or even humic acid if you happen to apply it at the exact right time of year where you have the exact right type of stress that's stressing the exact right part of the grass that generates a particular hormone. Okay, so when those conditions line up just right, there could be some benefit to applying a product like kelp that has cytokinins or humic acids that have auxins or whatever. I mean, these products that have these hormones in them, it could be beneficial in a very specific situation.
Once a month, I'll do what I call the kitchen sink, where I throw...
Well, what have you been doing so far? You got like 10 products already on the list. And then once a month, he's going to do the kitchen sink. Good Lord.
Everything at the lawn. And yes, if you do the calculations properly, I'm throwing down over 120 ounces of juice in with a 4-gallon backpack sprayer. It's a lot. Hello.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. That's the affirming the consequent. He has no clue what he's doing in terms of his flawed reasoning. But that's a post hoc ergo propter. After this, therefore, because of this. I did this, therefore it caused it. The rooster crowed and the sun came up. Therefore, the rooster caused the sun to come up. And again, I'm not saying what he didn't do it. I'm just saying that you can't make that connection. Premise 1 and premise 2 are true, but the form of it, the structure of it is flawed, and that's why it's a formal fallacy.
So let me show you what the kitchen sink consists of. This right here is the kitchen sink.
Holy Moses. Look at all this stuff. Holy cow. That's the reason I said he's the greatest cheerleader for buying all the stuff you don't need. He's got on his, let's count them. He's got 1, 2, well, this might be in the jug in this box. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. He's got 14 products he's going to throw at his lawn. And this is also the composition division fallacy. When you have so much stuff out there, you're throwing out there, how are you going to know what part of all this stuff actually was beneficial?
Hydrotain once a month.
We've gone over hydrotain. I didn't know that. I forgot he had this on the video. We've gone over hydrotain, and there's only one known paper on that, and it showed clearly that it didn't do anything. It had 4 or 5 studies in that one paper, and it didn't provide any benefit to the turf grass.
It's going to help keep that keep the moisture into your lawn. This is a must. Hydrotain. Oh, it doesn't work. Whatever. It works for me. Helping yucca.
Whatever. Okay, it works for you. Great. Doesn't make any difference to me. If you have your own personal experience or personal revelation, that doesn't do anybody else any good. Just because you did it and you think you saw a response, it doesn't help anybody else. We have to know whether or not we can predict its response with other people as well. Yeah, there's really no reason to consider, anything in here other than the nitrogen, the P and K if you have those deficiencies, the iron and manganese if you want a little color, and the PGR. I mean, if those are all useful, I guess. The only thing I use is nitrogen. That's it. But
okay, what he's talking about is like my biggest thing. I apply iron and nitrogen together just because I know it works. I know what they do. They work together. They green your grass. It's a no-brainer. It's easy. When it comes to everything else, yeah, I've told you, if you just apply humic acid, look for a response. Do the mat thing. Put mat down on your grass, to block out an area and spray it. And, try to do your own study at home. It's not a scientific study, but it's a way that you could see if what you're doing is going to help. Sea kelp can be a little beneficial for root growth, especially if you're putting sod down. It's going to help. There's a study that actually showed that when they were laying sod and applying different fertilizers and things like that, that the sea kelp actually helped in the root growth of sod. And it was probably had something to do with the repair of the roots from being cut when the sod was cut, because the grass was under stress. And like he was talking, you have to apply some of these things at the exact specific time, to get the right reaction to what you're putting down, like heat stress. That's why I've said, with heat stress, there's no preventative to heat stress. Having potassium available is probably the most important thing. If you're potassium deficient and your grass goes into heat stress, you're prevent that. I don't know what's going on with my mic here. Sorry about that. I'm using a different one because I'm not sure what happened to the other one, and I don't normally use this mic. So I guess I'll probably stand closer to my receiver here. But like I said, potassium, just one of those things that what you're told about it doesn't prevent anything. And those are the important things that I'm trying to get across is you're applying a lot of stuff to your lawn from different lawn care channels. Even the bag itself of fertilizer that you're buying is telling you to apply some of these things for specific reasons. And it doesn't do that at all. Just like the whole winterizing your lawn, potassium or a higher potassium type fertilizer has nothing to do with winterizing your lawn. It's just a fertilizer gimmick to try to get you to buy their product because your lawn goes dormant in the wintertime. So those are the important things that I'm trying to get across is, there's really only 4 or 5 different fertilizers that you need to put in your lawn, from iron to nitrogen, manganese, sulfur. You need sulfur in your lawn because sulfur is what helps your nitrogen react in the soil for the plant to uptake it and stuff like that. So there's just lots of these different things that, there's reasons for doing them. And then there's like no reason for doing others. And that's all we're trying to put across. You know, that and the whole phosphorus being restricted thing. I mean, that's a big deal. And if you don't understand why phosphorus is being restricted, you know, it has a lot to do with the water, you know, runoff into streams and oceans, rivers, lakes, and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it just creates a algae issue for the most part, where they call it the red tide in the oceans. I've talked about in a previous video, you know, high phosphorus contents in the oceans. You can go out in the middle of the night to the beach, walk around, and you'll see a red glow in the sand and the water as the waves are breaking in on the shore. I grew up as a kid, you know, witnessing this, and I thought it was just really cool. And then, you know, now as an adult, I find out, you know, that's not really cool at all, because it's damage. It's damaging the water, you know, the ocean. So we'll move on from that. I got some other things on. So just a brief introduction here. Okay, you know, I showed this video earlier this year. This is my backyard, and this is what it looked like. I mean, it actually looked worse than this. You know, I had 3 trees, peach tree, 2 peach trees, and I forget what the other one was, pear maybe. And I thought it was gonna be really cool to grow some fruit trees and, you know, get some fruit off of them, stuff like that. You know, I like to grow things, and it just became a big mess. These trees grow really massively, and I just wanted to get rid of them. So my friend Jason there, he came over and he helped me. This was back in March. And Jason was the one that helped me with my front yard here. This is when I tore out my front yard when I was doing the first reno on it. Did the sod cutter, pulled all this out. He helped me rip all the sod out, pile it up. We dragged it off, and you know, got the soil preps here. So he came over here in March, so it was still really cold, really wet, just ugly out in general. And he helped me clean this area up so I could get it prepared for doing grass seed. I had cut these trees down. I have a saw, and then I also have a tree pruner attachment for my ryobi. And, you know, pulling stumps out, you know, it's a little bit of work. You know, you got to dig it out if you want to do it right. I mean, of course, you can rent a stump grinder, and a stump grinder will take care of it pretty quick. I did a video earlier this year. In my front yard, I had a really huge tree that I used a stump grinder on it. It had a stump that was probably 5 foot round, something like that. You know, it was huge. The tree was like 80 foot tall, and it had just died. And like I said, I had a video where I talked about that, what happened, you know, how it probably died. It's probably my fault why it died, from doing previous renovations and stuff like that. So we're just, you know, going at it here, removing these stumps. You know, this area here is also kind of where my garden used to be, to the, was that to the left? And it's just part of my backyard. You know, I've been trying to work on to get looking really nice. One of my other big issues with my backyard, and why I was trying to redo it and get it looking better, was, you know, I'd redone my backyard, you know, when I redid my front yard 3 years ago. And I put a lot of work and effort into it to, you know, level it, get it nice and smooth. I was tired of pushing my lawnmower and just bumping around and bouncing. And, you know, I wanted it smooth. I wanted it nice. I didn't want my lawnmowers to feel like I was, you know, doing 4-wheel out there, you know, when I was mowing. So I did the leveling. I put a bunch of soil out, leveled it out. And within a few months, it was like right back to where it was. It was bumpy and the lawnmower's bouncing around. I was really frustrated with it. And, I found out, or what I realized is it's the worm castings. You know, I've done videos on worm castings, how to get rid of them, because when you have a putting green and all that sort of stuff, worm castings can be really hardcore on your putting green, especially for mudding and mowing and all that stuff. So I have a video on how to get rid of earthworms, worm castings, that sort of stuff. If you don't want to kill them, there's other ways you can deal with earthworms and stuff. But if your lawn is really bumpy, it's pretty much because of earthworms, and their castings. All they're doing is pushing up little mounds of castings, and then they come to the surface level, and then they're below your grass level, and you don't really see them in your lawnmower. If you cut a little bit short, is going to bounce right over the top of it. So I've gone and attacked the worms in my backyard, and gotten rid of them for the most part. You're never going to get rid of worms 100%. And this time of year, worms don't really come out. They don't really produce too much castings because it's so dry and hot. They don't really come up out of the ground. I haven't seen worm casting for quite a while. Now, it doesn't mean I don't have worms. When I did my renovation in my front yard where I raised my grass level, I dug up all that grass and sod and stuff, and there wasn't one worm in there. There wasn't one grub. There wasn't one anything. And this was like a, I don't know, what, 8x8 area, something maybe a little bit bigger than that. So here we've got that whole area cleared out, and I have my Ryobi expanded with the rototiller attachment. I just ground up the ground, and this is still March, I believe, late March. It's still too cold to plant seed, but I'm just trying to do all the prep work, because that's the most important part when you're trying to reseed an area, whether it's a large area or a small area, anything like that. You need to do the right prep work. I added soil, I rolled it, I'm trying to make it smooth. Overall, this project right here turned out pretty well. I do have some problems with it that I didn't really think about when I was doing it, because it is a hill. I tried to make it as gradual as possible, but there is kind of a little, point to the top where it kind of, goes from going up and then it turns. And at that point where it kind of levels out, it's too much of a angle or slope or whatever. So when I take the rotary mower and go over the top of it, it just scalps it. So I'm now reel mowing it, and I still kind of have a little bit of a problem. The reel mower does a better job, but what I found is a drive tire, even when I have it disengaged, it doesn't raise enough to where when I pull the mower back down where the wheel drags on it. So I have a couple areas in this seated area where I probably should have thought it out a little bit more, but a lot of things are trial and error. And that was what I learned, that hill, that mound, you got to do a gradual slope to it. You can't just, level it out all of a sudden and have this big angle going up. So I'm just trying to get this soil compacted back down, not tight, but just, I'm trying to get it level. I'm trying to get it ready for seeding. It seems like in Western Washington here, it takes forever for the temperatures to get warm to do a seed project. And I do most of my reseeding projects in the spring because I wait all winter long to get something going, and my lawn starts looking terrible, or I get a great idea to do a project or a reseeding of an area. And you wait 6 months, and all you're doing is thinking about doing it. You look at it in your backyard, you're tired of looking at it. So spring, it's not the greatest time to do a reseeding, but I like torturing myself and do those sorts of seeding things. And you start it too soon, temperatures get warm, your soil temperatures get up, and then you do your project, you get it seeded, and then the temperatures drop right during germination. So then you go from perfect conditions for germination to terrible conditions. Cold and rainy, overcast, no sun, it's not warm. So here I got my drag. I always talk about my drag. It's, one of my best tools for doing a reseeding job, just because other than kind of dragging and leveling the area and making it smooth, it really helps me determine where the low spots are or where the high spots are, so I can concentrate on leveling those out. It's just a couple of 4x4s. It's a little heavy, so it pulls dirt pretty well. And I just have a rope attached to it. You could probably do it with one. You could use some fencing, those sorts of things. I've talked about this in a lot of my videos where I redo do seeding projects and stuff like that. It's just something I've always used all my life. My dad taught me this when I was, a kid doing this. So works like a level rake, but a level rake is kind of small and a little bit more work, especially if you're doing a large area. Like if you're doing your whole yard, this is really great for doing it. You can get on your hands and knees with the smaller 2x4 and use it and, drag out your lawn manually on your knees and, pull a 2x4 across and all that kind of stuff. But it's great because you can put a level on it and you can see exactly how, out of level your area that you're working on is. Here I'm using my peat moss spreader, spreading probably some compost or something, maybe some topsoil, maybe a mix. I did so many processes on this reseeding, I can't remember. I don't see any bags there, so I think it is compost, though, topsoil that I'm putting down there. I'm just trying to amend the soil because the soil hasn't grown anything but the trees and that haven't fertilized it at all. There was a lot of worms in this area because those trees, they would drop all their leaves in the fall, and the worms love the leaves in the ground, so they multiply. And I know when I was digging in this area, there was a lot of worms down in there. I did start treating it though with tea seed meal. That's TEA, tea seed meal. Tea seed meal is what kills the worms. It's a non-toxic product. It's not harmful. It's basically a byproduct of tea seed, like what you drink. So I use that to start cutting down the worms because, I really just don't want a bunch of worm castings in my yard. It doesn't mean I don't have worms, but like I said, it just cuts down and reduces the amount of worms that you have. So sorry that this video is kind of dragging on here. Thought I had cut it up a little bit better than this, but I can fast forward. All right, dropping grass seed. So after I had got this whole area, seeded, leveled to a pretty good area, I dragged it with my rake here just to kind of loosen the soil up so that I could get the seed down in it. And then I just dropped a real heavy coat of seed. And you see here in my backyard, I reseeded, overseeded a lot of area because this area, let me see here, right here, sorry, having a hard time doing the reverse thing. So this was Kentucky bluegrass in this area here, and it just wasn't growing that great from when I renovated it last year. So I just decided I'm also trying to level this area out because I also have my area up here, which I have my Bermuda grass. You can barely see it, it's dormant, but that's my Bermuda grass project I'm doing. Growing Bermuda grass in Western Washington, probably a crazy idea, but I'm doing it, and I'm actually having some success. Had a couple of failures along the way here, and I'm going to talk about that in my next slide. I can show you what I'm doing there and show you the progress. I like that Bermuda grass actually. So after I put the seed down, I dragged my rake across it again, and then I rolled that in. And we're just talking about good seed to soil contact. And then here, time lapse of getting this grow. The dates are down on the bottom. The progression on this is over a long period of time. This area took really well because it gets a lot of sun. the further back you go in this video, back up here, it gets a lot shadier, and it's a lot harder to get the grass seed to grow over there, actually germinate. That's my biggest problem area that I have in my backyard. I have another angle I'm going to show you here that's just in trying to get grass seed to grow. So the date's going to fix down here. You know, my camera, I don't know, it reset. I think the battery died or something, and I had to put new batteries in it. But the date changed back to there. So now we're in May. Actually, this is the other camera. So this is the shaded area, and you're going to see as the time lapse goes on here, this area just doesn't get any sun. And this area right here in the bottom is the worst area I have for getting grass to grow. So I'm still kind of working on a little small patch down here. I'll show you, because here's some after pictures. This is like kind of current right here. This is what the lawn's looking like. And I'm really working hard to try to get my backyard looking a lot better. I'm actually cutting it at 1/4 of an inch now. It's not used to that. I used to always cut it at like 3/4 of an inch. So I'm trying to get it to train and grow. But so, you know, this is that whole area that I reseeded and overseeded. And this was the area that I pulled the tree stumps out of. There's 3 in there. And then I have my Bermuda grass project up here. So you can see this is kind of current because it's going good. And then look, I have brand new Bermuda grass plugs right here. So we're going to talk about that in the next scene though. So this is kind of the shaded area. You know, I feel like I need to dethatch this and work on getting the grass to thicken up. Like I said, I just started cutting it at 1/4 of an inch probably 2 weeks ago. And then I'm also having issues with watering back here. My watering schedule has been terrible. You know, it gets hot, I turn it up, and then I turn it down. And it's just driving me nuts because I had the water hardly watering at all again for the second time. I got it going really good, nice, it was getting really green. And then I turned it down because it got cool and I felt like it was getting too much water. And this is the front yard as of right now, right here. I mean, front yard is looking really good. And like I said, I'm not bragging about my yards here. I'm just trying to show you what, you know, just the nitrogen and iron that I add, nothing else, and low mowing at 1/4 of an inch. You know, you could have a great looking lawn. You know, in the bright sun like this, the greenness in a photo just doesn't come out as much as it is, but it actually looks really nice. So I'm going to show you my Bermuda project here, step out of the way. So this is when I planted all those plugs. I got 100 plugs last October, and this is November here. And it basically says to spread them out 12 inches apart. So I'm using a pineapple coring tool. I basically took the handle off and used it to make all these plug holes. I think you have to make them like 1.5 inches or something like that deep, 2 inches. And then, so I was using a measuring tape there to get it all nice and even. I mean, I think I did a pretty good job here. I mean, I'm no farmer, but I feel like I did the spacing pretty well. So I got all my plugs in November, and I just kind of got this area ready. And, you know, of course, that Bermuda grass is dormant. I rolled it, try to keep it as level and compacted as possible. And this was a great idea I had to try to help contain it. I don't think this is really going to do anything, but I put this border down in the ground, you know, kind of as an area to use for edging and things like that. Like Bermuda grass from creeping into my Kentucky bluegrass. I'm going to say it's not working. This Bermuda grass grows like crazy, but I am doing a pretty good job of maintaining it within the area I want to keep it. So now we're just going to kind of do a little time lapse here of some of the growth and stuff like this. It's really dormant right here, but a lot of this also has to do with the grass in the background, just kind of what I've been doing. So as you see here, this is May. This is basically it coming out of dormancy and starting to grow. And man, I got a lot of weeds and a lot of different types of grass growing in here. That's why I have all these dead pieces right here, because I sprayed some, it got Bermuda grass and killed it. I don't think it killed it. I think it's coming back. But so I got these new plugs here. God, they look terrible. I got these in the mail last week. I was going to plant them today and hope they come back. I'm sure they will, but the original ones I got were really good. But look at this Bermuda grass. Look at how thick it's growing here. I actually mowed it yesterday, kind of down here in this lower area. But I need to get this area to fill in up here. All that area is so growing. And here again, just showing you the plugs here. They still look, I've only had them since Wednesday, so they still look a little terrible. Well, hopefully they come back really well and fill that area. And I'm sure by the time they start growing, October is going to be here, and then by that time, it's going to be all over with. So I have the BS list here. I believe I got this to work here so I can scroll on it. Let's see. Actually, maybe not. Oh well. I think I have it working in one of my slides. So this is the evapotranspiration. I was telling you guys about how important this is for watering and stuff like that. We're kind of going into a heat wave this year. So I'm trying to keep track of this a little bit more to work on my watering, because I've been doing a terrible job with watering lately. That's terrible. Oh no, I can't get my... So like I said, I'm just trying to get the weekly up here. So this week, about 1 3/4 inches of evapotranspiration. So, in watering, I'm going to need to add extra water this week, because we're supposed to be like in the 80s and 90s, which is really hot for us. I talked about, we barely get over 80 very often. But look at some of these other numbers. If you're in Idaho, some parts of Idaho, look at 2.35. And this page is just the evapotranspiration page at the NOAA website. You can just type in evapotranspiration map and look for the NOAA to come up and select it. And then it's showing you here. Let's back up to the top so you guys can see this. Yeah, there we go. So this just gives you all these numbers all over of, about how much extra water you probably need to apply to your lawn to keep it from going dormant, drying out, dying, lack of water, those sorts of things. I think it's a pretty helpful little map. What's crazy is some of these other areas where it seems like it's really hot and humid, their numbers are not as high as I would have expected. But I don't know, maybe that has to do with the humidity and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know how this will work. But yeah, so you can check out your area here. It does the whole U.S. So, background there. And I showed you my sprinkler repair. I talked to you about, the importance of when you're putting your sprinklers in. The volume was a little heavy, a little loud last week when I did this video. So I thought I would just show it again briefly. But planning your sprinkler system, I try to make sure all my sprinklers are outside of my grass area just for this reason right here. I can replace sprinkler heads if I want to change. Like I said, I use these Rainbird impact sprinklers. I find they're the best for coverage, getting nice even coverage. They cover a large area, so a whole bunch of them. I have 3 cycles, 3 sprinklers per cycle, and they cover about 45 feet in distance, and I have them overlapping each other pretty well. So just something important to think about when you're setting up a sprinkler system is access to your sprinklers in case something breaks. You run over one with the lawnmower. My son was over yesterday and he was talking about how he ran over one of his sprinkler heads with the lawnmower. He'd been really concentrating on not doing that, and he did it and he tore the sprinkler up, so he has to tear it out. And it's like one of the few sprinklers he has in the middle of his lawn because it's right along his patio, so he actually has to dig up the grass and stuff like that to kind of fix that. So that kind of sucks. But this project, took me about 10 minutes. This video wasn't even really edited that much, but sprinkler's working great. It's still working good. Just got to keep them going, keep the grass growing. Last week also, I really screwed up this video as well. It was a little too large. And so I just wanted to kind of show you again this bed knife that I put in, just kind of a couple of key points. It's a nice shiny bed knife. I'm really having no luck with my bed knife. I've already sucked up a few rocks with this thing, and it's already having issues. I told you I had some topsoil come in, and I tried the best to sift a lot of the rocks out and stuff like that, but still rocks got into my lawn. And that's the first thing a real mower cutting low is going to find, is a rock. So I've already dinged up my brand new bed knife. And then here again, I'm just trying to show this collar here with the washers. It's really important when you're putting this bed knife in to make sure you put the bolts in the right holes, because this one, let's see if I can do this here. This one bottom bolt here, it actually goes in towards the reel area, and if it goes in too deep, the reel's gonna hit that bolt, and your reel's not gonna spin. So if you put the wrong bolt in the wrong hole, that's a problem you're gonna have when you're changing your bed knife or working on it or whatever, cleaning it. I take my McLean apart a lot. It's really easy to work on, and that's what I like about this McLean, is it's really easy to work on, and on top of that, it cuts really low. So that's the bed knife replacement. I did a back lapping after that. I have the back lapping kit. Let's see here. That's me adjusting the bed knife. That was another thing too. You need to. There's a picture of the. So those are the bed knife bolts going in right there. When you put the bed knife on, the new one, you do need to raise your reel a little bit, because the new bed knife is going to install a little bit differently than the one that you're pulling out of there. So it's going to be a tight fit if you don't adjust that reel height back up. So that's why these 2 bolts right down to adjust your bed knife. And then I use a screwdriver on these little, I don't know what you'd call it. That just kind of helps you raise and lower it, and you can level it and all that kind of stuff. I use a hammer, a little rubber mallet. That's something I got from Gulfco, when I got my new reel, they gave me that mallet that's made out of their material they make their reels out of. And I just use it to tap the reel down. It's an easier way of doing it. You know, McLean tells you to take a piece of wood, 2x4 or something like that, a little small one, and smack on the wood on the reel with the mallet. Yeah, I found that didn't work as well, and I use those little bolt adjusting holes there. See, so here I'm adjusting the bed knife. You can see, look at that, not doing very good there. So just trying to make sure that it's in the right area there, getting a good cut. So looks like on the left side there it was going okay. So I adjusted it, and it seems like these bed knives in the center here kind of have a little dip to them. I mean, here you can see I got it working, and it's cutting the paper really good. And I believe that was before I did the backlapping, because, you know, here I'm doing the backlapping, this is after. So that was basically me setting the bed knife to reel properly, and then now I'm actually going to do a backlapping. And I've already gone over all this, but that's the reversing kit right there that you can put on there. Now, somebody sent me a comment, and I never thought about this, but he said that he has this. Let me go back here so you can see it. So he told me he leaves this on. He doesn't take the plate off, and he just swaps out the sprocket. So you have a smaller sprocket that you put on here to do the chain reversing, and then when you run it normally, it's a smaller chain and it's got a little bit larger sprocket. So this is the only thing you really have to interchange to reverse your blade. And McLean sends you a new chain cover that covers this whole thing. So you can make this a lot simpler and a lot easier by just leaving this plate on and replacing the socket each time you're going to do your backlapping. And that's going to, you know, take your amount of time that it takes to install this to just a couple of minutes, and it's going to be really quick. I like this reversing kit because it just makes it so much easier to backlap your reel. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to leave mine on there. So I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to go ahead and actually install that on there. So that's the bed knife. Here's my backyard currently. This video last week also was out of whack. I hadn't adjusted it properly for the screen. So I was just going to show it again. I'm really working hard on, you know, getting this cut at 1/4 of an inch and greening it up, thickening it up. And this is current. So this is just kind of showing you where I'm at with my backyard. You know, it was April when I did the reseeding project and all that stuff. It was late April because I did 2 other projects before I started mine. So it was pretty much May. And it filled in pretty quickly. You know, by middle of June, it was pretty full, and I was rotary mowing it. And then I decided I'm going to start reel mowing it. So I'm actually cutting it at 1/4 of an inch here. And this was last weekend, and that iron comparison video that I did is pretty much gone. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do another soil test comparison. I'm going to do the My Soil kit, which is the ion resin exchange process, which is worthless. I'm going to do that to compare it to the Malic 3, which is a test process that lots of researchers use. It's more accurate. And, you know, the soil testing only really works for certain nutrients. You know, there's really no way of measuring the amount of nitrogen in your soil. There's no solid test. I mean, there's tests that people are using to do it, but there's actually no real evidence of the accuracy of doing that nitrogen testing, even the Malic 3. That's why when you do a Malic 3 test, you shouldn't get a nitrogen report. You're going to get like phosphorus, potassium, even measuring iron there's no real specific means that's supposedly accurate. But so for some nutrients, it works really good. For your pH, it works really good. I want to do a test in my backyard just to see where it is. I did my pH soil test last weekend on the last show. And, I've told you why I like checking my pH, mostly for moss. But I actually want to check my soil nutrient content back here just to see where it's at. I've never really taken care of my backyard. I've only put nitrogen and iron on it this year. I put a little on last year, but not much at all. So I'm working on trying to make this look a lot better. I actually ordered a golf net to start hitting golf balls in my backyard so I can do some practice and maybe get back into golf. I got a neighbor who really wants to go golfing, and so I want to get practiced up so I can go golfing with him. He's a real nice guy. I've let him borrow some of my tools, and he just wants to take me golfing. I just don't have the time to get to the driving range. Like last week, I worked some really long hours, and I didn't get any video done. I didn't really get anything done. That's why you didn't see much from me last week. But yeah, so that golf net's supposed to come today. I'm kind of looking forward to trying that. I'm going to plant some of those Bermuda plugs and start hitting some balls in the backyard. I think that's going to be a good time. Oh, look at that. You can see some of the Bermuda right there. So yeah, I ran my reel mower over this yesterday when I was mowing. We had a bunch of family over for my younger son's birthday, and I actually ran the reel mower over this bottom part of the Bermuda grass. So that was good. Putting green, it's growing. I'm not really that happy with putting green right now, so I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to work on the low mow part of it. I just got higher. I'm really seriously thinking about actually redoing my whole putting green. I've been thinking about, people ask me, hey, where's the sand trap? Where's the sand trap going? I'm actually thinking about putting a sand trap in. Just have just an area of my yard that is a lot lower, closer to the house. And kind of part of my problem with mowing putting green is, I have to step off the putting green and down. And what ends up happening is I end up pushing the reel mower down into the grass, and it's digging into the grass, and it's making it look like a mess. It's kind of been a problem I've had for quite a while. So I'm going to do that. This is my Kentucky bluegrass right here. And this was a mow I did after I got back. Actually, this one's kind of older here because this is before I raised my yard here. My grass isn't growing over here, so. And this was just a couple weeks ago, my putting green. I told you I moved my flagpole and the hole and all that. So I put this in there and I started doing some putting. Show you how the ball rolls here. So it is uphill. You got to hit a little harder, but I can make a putt every now and then. I think I made a couple on this day. There's another one. I made a couple in a row, actually. So you see it's got some break there. Not much, just a little bit. And this, like I said, was a couple of weeks ago. So you can see my putting green is still recovering from the sanding I did. And I'm just cutting it too low. I need to let it grow a little longer and work on cutting it. So that's all I really got. I really just wanted to kind of get some of this information out, some more great information, positive information to help you save money and not do things in your lawn that you don't need to do, wasting your money. That's all I'm really trying to get out here is how you can have a great looking lawn, not putting a lot of time and energy into it, not having to put a bunch of fertilizers and those sorts of things. You can do this right here, nitrogen and iron. You start having some problems with phosphorus deficiencies, and you start seeing that, do a soil test, Malic 3, and get a soil test done to verify that. But your yard will run on virtually no phosphorus and potassium. If you're having some heat stress problems, you can apply some potassium. But remember, the ratio is 4 to 1 to 2. That is the ratio of the uptake of these nutrients in your grass. Your grass is never going to take up more than 1% of nitrogen to the 4%. 1% of phosphorus to the 4% of nitrogen. 4, 1, 2. That's your uptake of N, P, and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Dumping all this extra phosphorus and potassium into your lawn is not doing anything to your lawn except for providing the environment for phosphorus to leach into your yard, into the water table, get into your storm drains, which is going to run off to wherever they run off to. And it's just going to create a big problem. And legislature is going to just continue to more and more restrict these types of products. So please be careful with what you're doing. Please be responsible. Hey, watch these lawn care guys. They do give you a lot of good information, but you got to think twice. You got to read bags. You got to read labels, and hope that the information that the company that's providing that fertilizer is giving you is correct. Because I've already put across 3 or 4 different bags, products that the information on the bag is actually very inaccurate and not even true for what the product's going to do to your lawn. So anyways, I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.